Hello, this is Jasmine, and I'm one half of Fleur and Arbor. As part of our month of love, Olivia and I wanted to come together to have a conversation about self love and what it means to us. We hope you enjoy this two-part series.
So this is going to be an interesting start to it. I want to open up with a quote because I found it really nice. It says, self-love requires an active pursuit of acting on your own behalf and taking care of yourself even when it's hard.
That's really nice. I like that.
What do you think of that, first off?
I think it's true because it's in order to love anything else and anyone else, you have to kind of be in love with yourself first, don't you? Or like at peace with yourself. Maybe to say you're in love with yourself is a step too far, but loving yourself can be just accepting who you are and where you are in life, I guess. So yeah, I would agree. And obviously when any of us go through periods where we're like struggling for whatever reason, it becomes incredibly hard to love yourself, and that's when you become the most self-critical of yourself and everything around you as well. It kind of spirals.
Absolutely. So what does self-love mean to you personally?
Self-love to me I think it's giving myself time to be alone is a big thing for me. And I guess that's one of the things I'm enjoying about lockdown is that I don't have to make that time happen. There is just more time to naturally do that. It's doing the things that I find joy in that don't involve other people, always kind of tied together. But whether that be just like a bit of journaling, getting my thoughts onto paper, getting my concerns out there into the world so I can deal with them a bit better. It's like my routine, which always starts with a strong coffee in the morning. If that's interrupted, that's like, who has taken this away from me and why? Yeah, and like certain rituals throughout the day, like whether that be putting on your makeup. For me, I like doing my makeup. There isn't a day where I don't do it. I have to be really unwell to not do my makeup. But I like it, and it's me putting on the face I like to project to the world. And actually, I'm not projecting it to anyone at the moment because no one's really me, but I still do it.
That is the ultimate act.
Yeah, I get dressed and just things like that, and just like making time to watch movies that you really enjoy and read books that you're enjoying, and just I think having time to just do what you want fundamentally.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's important, and I think that you're right that setting yourself up right for the day really helps with the flow, because if you interrupt that flow and you don't give yourself, you said give yourself time, if you don't give yourself that, then how can you give to something else? How I feel. So what boundaries do you have to help you take that time for yourself and give yourself that love?
It's tricky. So like pre-COVID, say I was having a week that involved lots of, it might have been work stuff in the evening, but it also might have been social things. If there was a week where it was looking like, 6 nights, I'd be doing something, I would really reserve that one night to just be me doing absolutely nothing, but also doing everything I want in an evening. So it's like, whether that's the series I'm watching or just cooking myself a decent meal because I've eaten out like however many times that week. Now it's kind of like getting away from the screen, probably more so. Obviously, working from home, we're all much more screen based. So I do just try and switch off or go, it's all the usual stuff, going for a walk, getting out of the house, seeing daylight, especially on a day where it's sunny. I'm kind of like, oh my God, I need to get outside and feel the sun on my skin, because I do try and go out when it's raining, but it ain't the same. And just, I think as well, like opposite to that is almost like purposefully booking things like talks. Like I've done some kind of weird Zoom dance classes and things like that, which I probably would never have thought to do before, but I'm deliberately trying to find new things to also stimulate me outside of work. And while it still might be on a screen, I think it's important to still be feeling like you're doing something new, and I might research a new place I want to walk to, that sort of thing at the moment. Mm.
So what would you say fulfills you, like I say daily, yeah. Let's not go too, let's hone it down to like what fulfills you daily. Like what are your pillars within your day that you kind of would say at the end of the day, like you feel satisfied?
I think for me, I like to get up early still. So I get up at 6. I like to have a kind of half an hour to just do some sort of light exercise, just because I feel like that benefits me. It's time to have a shower or a bath and then like lounge about for a bit before I'm logging on for work. I do a lot of lounging first thing in the morning. Um, Coffee, I've already talked about, very important, strong coffee. And then it's kind of like my day is pretty routine because of work. I do 9 to 5. So there's meetings, there's various tasks I have to do, and working in project management, that's very fast paced. And having to be very kind of like, I have to react to problems a lot. Like even yesterday, I'm off work today, but yesterday I had 2 people crying on the phone to me, and I was just like, oh God, drop everything. And then it's kind of like firefighting the rest of my day because things like that happen, crises happen, and then you have to manage it. And then obviously my break for lunch, which I do try to do at 12
Yeah.
every day. I like to have an early lunch because actually, having been up since 6, I'm absolutely knackered by the time lunchtime comes around and I need some food. And then it's going out, getting a bit of fresh air, and then it's straight back into work. And then as soon as it depends on the day because often I do have to work a little bit late. So my kind of 9 to 5 is more like 9 to 7 at the moment. But then it's being very strict to myself and saying like, okay, now it's the evening, shut the computer off. Like my emails are not something I look at, and I'm just like having dinner, doing whatever I want, like whatever it is. But that it's my time to do as I please, and that's really sort of important. And it's a real definitive wind down to bedtime.
Yeah.
And kind of like I might light some candles, have some nice nighttime tea, and then get really cozy. The fairy lights go on, and that's kind of especially important when that kind of blur between work and home life is it's just kind of there's no
Yeah.
yeah.
So what would you say is something that you do creatively? Like when we're in this kind of space, especially now, I think it's more important than ever to feel that creativity nourished,
hmm
to use. So what would spark your creativity?
It might be something I've seen, something I'm trying to do, and this is unsuccessfully, but I am trying to make a point every day of watching like a short YouTube video about an artist or an exhibition or something like that to inspire me. Whether that be 3 minutes or 10 minutes long, I want that moment where I'm thinking about something other than work, I suppose. And sometimes that doesn't happen. Don't get me wrong, but it also might be scrolling on Instagram or seeing some photographers on Twitter or something like that, and then I might suddenly have like an idea of something, and I kind of have a notebook that I might do a little doodle in or write down a thought. And that's kind of as creative as I tend to be able to get during the working week. But then weekends, it's much more kind of like I just have a quick idea to sew something and I'll start a little project. And I think for now, I'm not really able to commit to like anything long term, like
Mm.
long term creative pursuits. But being able to just, whether it's like I started sewing scrunchies recently, just because they're
Yeah,
really
so
easy.
I love them.
They're
I
just easy. Yeah, they're easy. I feel like I make something and I'm like, wow, looks like a scrunchie, tick, fulfilled. And then and like I'm doing other things as well, like I guess more creative things. But I feel like I just can't commit to anything big at the moment. But I'm definitely finding time to be creative, whether it's a quick doodle or my sewing or whatever fits in really.
That's so important though, because like our creativity kind of, for me, it fuels everything else. And
Mm,
if you're not feeling creative, then you can feel a bit stuck. But I kind of find the creative in the everyday could be like a dance class,
hmm
cooking, or yoga, or something kind of not traditionally described as creative. Like I'm not sitting down with a paintbrush and paints and paint a masterpiece, but I'm making that act where I'm thinking I'm going to throw a few ingredients together and see what happens. And I think that's kind of something that you can bring to it as well. Like, I think it's something that is wider than we kind of prescribe. Like you can bring creativity into anything.
Definitely. And it ultimately it's self-expression, isn't it? And just as you say, if you're cooking a meal and you decide to go rogue from the recipe, that's you putting your own flair on something. And yeah, and I don't know, I think a big part of my everyday creativity is like my clothes. Obviously, as you know, like I collect vintage fashion, still really into it. Whether I'm working from home or not, I still like to get dressed. I'm not someone who sits in leggings and a jumper unless I'm working out. And then no one sees it. But it's still important for me to feel like ready for the day, and I might have a different idea of how I want to dress. And yeah, it might be more comfortable than other days, but then I might also be wearing like a sparkly 1970s maxi dress just because I want to. So yeah.
That actually leads very nicely into my next question, which is, what do you value about yourself?
I'll say that again, I can't hear you.
What do you value about yourself?
Oh, what do I value about myself? I think I feel like I've always been very conscious of who I am and who my like what my personality is. And I feel like I've always been very aware that I've been a bit of a weirdo most of my life, but very happy about that. Like I don't say that in a like, oh, I'm a weirdo, woe is me. But like I think I'm very self-aware, and I'm aware that I have quite a few like I guess weird hobbies, or they'll be deemed weird to some people or deemed a bit out there to some people. And I think like I'm just really glad that that's never stopped. Like even in school and after school, like university and just being in the workplace, like there's moments even today when I'm gonna be on the verge of 29 years old where occasionally I'm like, God, I'm just really weird, aren't I? But I'm like, thank God, because I wouldn't want to be any other way. And that's something I really cherish.
Yeah.
Privately and not privately, I think it's kind of like, why would I'm just glad I never conformed to be like anything other than who I naturally am.
Yeah.
And I hope that continues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
So, what do you think? Let's pick another question. Why do you believe people should love themselves?
Well, sounds cheesy, but if you can't love yourself, who can you love? Like people say it, but it's so true. Like, what have you got to give if you can't love yourself? And you only have you, like, to go a bit dark, and you know, this is where I'm probably showing I'm a bit weird, but like you're born alone and you die alone. And you're dragged into the world and you have to live with yourself, like you do. And sometimes that's a struggle and sometimes it isn't. But ultimately you're with yourself the most out of anyone else on the planet. So why wouldn't you love yourself?
Yeah. Exactly. Couldn't have put it better myself. So what do you think some steps you could say to other people that they could take to start the self-love journey? So if they're struggling, if they're feeling like not worthy, not good enough, they're having all these like maybe anxious thoughts, they're trying but they're not quite there yet, how would you advise them on where to start?
I think I guess the first thing to say is that self-reflection can be quite traumatic. And sometimes I think, well, yeah, you have to be prepared for that, like some home truths to yourself, because with self-acceptance comes realizing who you are and how other people perceive you. In my personal opinion, they go hand in hand. And I think it's recognizing it might be as simple as like, what do you like and what don't you like? What are you willing to compromise on and what aren't you willing to compromise on in life? And whether that be the things you say yes to, or the type of career you go for, or like how you I don't know, some people might be looking at a new kind of route into education to just like change their life at the moment or moving somewhere else. I think all those things stem from like, okay, what do you want to do and why?
Yeah.
And I think that's a really positive place to start. And then in terms of like, if you're trying to accept yourself in terms of how you look, I think a big thing you can do is if you take a picture, take one and accept the one you've taken. That's something I've had to learn to do, because I used to hate every photo of myself. And I think a lot of people do, and of course you would, because you don't see yourself in that way. It's like the world flipped around, and that's not how we ever see ourselves. But I think like just challenging yourself to be like, okay, that is how I look, and actually it's fine.
Yeah.
It's more than fine. It's me. So like, you don't need to be anything else. And I think that's obviously I'm saying that, as I've said already, nearly 29. So like I've had a few years ahead of maybe some people, and also I'm really young compared to a lot of other people. And I would hope that that feeling of self-acceptance just grows as you get older. That's what I perceive it to be from, you know, my family and friends who are older than me. But so much of that is just like, I guess, becoming used to what you see as well. I just think it's really important to just yeah, like really look at yourself, but also look at the things you like. And it's a mindset, isn't it? It's like, yeah, we can all pick out flaws. You and I were talking about this the other day, in fact. But you can also choose to pick out the things you like.
You can, and I think it's flipping that. And recently, since our conversation on that, I've been focusing on how I feel rather than how I look. And that is such an interesting thing to get your head around, to be like, okay, I'm not going to put so much pressure on how I look today, but how do I feel? Oh, actually, I feel really good because, and then you realize that the things that make you feel good aren't aesthetics, they're like more practices that you do, rituals, things that ground you, and they're less what's the word, they're less kind of vapid, and they're more substantial. And then you think, okay, well, if I can learn how to love how I feel, then I can grow from that space stronger than if I didn't notice how I felt, you know.
Yeah, and like, I don't know, when I'm someone who keeps a physical photo album still. I'm aware some people don't do that. But when I look at those photos, yeah, in the moment I might have thought, oh, I didn't like how I look in that. But I still get it printed. And then maybe a year later I'll look and be like, God, that was a hilarious day out. Yeah. And oh, the memory. And yeah, I still look awful, but this picture is so worth having printed. Because when I'm maybe 90, who knows, I'll look back and have all these absolutely crazy things, like crazy memories, crazy moments of that was my life. And it's like, it's important. Yeah,
so important.
You're right, it's all about the feeling, and that's what your memory really is. It's, you remember things because you either had a great time or a bad time. You don't remember things that are kind of average.
Exactly. Don't, and the memories are so important. How do you currently love yourself? I know we've spoken a bit about it, but maybe you could kind of expand into some things that you do currently.
I think it's a part of this is a mindset. So I think I'm very aware at the moment of when I'm being harsh on myself, and that often at the moment that's because of work. It might be I've had a really intense week. I'm like overworked in terms of hours, and just generally like I'm just full of headache. I'm like too much screen time, and I'm just stressed ultimately. And it's in those moments I have to be like, okay, it's up to me now to change this, because I could carry on in the way I'm going, and it's not going to make me feel any better. And so it'll be like finishing at 5. It'll be having a really nice lunch every day and really utilizing my lunchtime to just like put something good inside of me. It'll be ringing my dad and my mum and having a nice conversation with them. It'll be reaching out to friends, just things like that. And sometimes it's more about like just hearing how other people are doing. I find like helps me get out of my own head. In those times when I'm being very self-critical, or just like, I'm just worn out. Sometimes you're like, I just want to know how the rest of the world is doing.
Yeah.
And I think by reaching out and you realize actually people are having the same problems as you, and you feel that kind of kinship. And I think that's like empathy, isn't it, at the end of the day? And that just feels really positive. And you're like, okay, like this is good. I'm in a better place now. Yeah.
Are they also the same things you would do to get out of a bad mood? So say you are being super self-critical and your mood is just like a thundercloud.
Mm.
You just can't shake it. So how would you kind of shift that mood? Would it be the similar ways or something a bit different?
Guess so. I might talk it out. I think I go two ways with this, because I might talk it out, and obviously we all tend to have like a person probably that we can talk to about absolutely anything, and like I'll go to my person, and there might be tears, there might be me being a complete asshole, or like who knows, but then it's like it gets dealt with, and something inside changes from that moment, and I can move on from this darkness. Or it might be like me actually having a real wallow in my bedroom and just like going through the emotions. And then equally, I come out the other side. And yeah, maybe I eat loads of chocolate, or like, who knows? Or I go for a really long walk. I think I often feel a lot better at the weekend because I feel like I can really go for a walk. I can just get out, and there's no like, oh, I have to be back for this meeting or this phone call. I can just go and do as I please, and I really feel reset after that. So yeah.
As a woman, do you feel that it's harder to love yourself? Like, would you say that in the grand scheme of things, do you think men have more positive, I don't know what the right word is, but like positive connotations around them, surrounding them through literature, media, all the outside sources, so that they have a more confident internal dialogue?
I don't know, because I feel like I think this I have a different perspective on this because I grew up in a household full of men, and then like a lot of my best friends are men as well. But I think men have the exact same concerns we do, but they're not allowed to talk about it. Or there's this perception that, oh, life should be easy for a man because you're a man and you can do anything. And that's not the case. There's still struggles. And men come in all kinds of like shapes and sizes as women do. We're all different inside and out. And I think in a way there's, because especially at the moment there's so much narrative around self-love, and particularly like we all talk about the pressures women face, and but where's that talk for the pressures of men, other than like men should be masculine? We know that, but there's a lot more actually that isn't discussed in terms of like how they struggle at work, and yeah, like who you want to be, who you want to project. And I don't think there's much space for men to talk about this. Obviously we all like men should talk about their feelings, but there's more than feelings as well. It's like there's so many constraints for everyone, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But going back to like me as a woman, do I feel there's more sort of pressure? I think there's a lot of pressure to have self-acceptance as well as be critical as yourself. I still don't think there's a very good balance, because it's kind of like, okay, so we all thought we had to look a certain way. Now you can look however you want, but you have to be happy about it. You can't talk about being negative about anything. And it's kind of like, hold on a minute, this doesn't work either. Because then you've got people who maybe their body shape is unconventional, but it's not unconventional, it's a body. And it's still like you have to celebrate it because it stands out in some way, and that doesn't work either in me. I'm like, I don't feel I fit there either myself. So it's kind of like it's still a competition in some level.
It is. So how do you get yourself out of that race? You know, it's quite a tricky one to unpick, and I don't think we have the time to unpick it now. But such an interesting conversation to circulate thoughts on, because yeah, I think exactly what you said is so freaking true, that we are like told everybody, and I mean to emphasize body, is to be accepted, but I guess with us kind of promoting ourselves and our, in inverted commas, brand online, it makes it quite a crowded space to be heard through all the noise. Like, there's no way that you can do things the right way, really, is there? I think it just has to feel right and going to come back to that word again, but authentic to you in order for you to feel kind of at peace. Which leads me on to my next question very nicely. Do you practice mindfulness?
So I'm not someone who actively looks up mindful activities. So I think, you know, there's people who are like, okay, I want to be mindful. What do I do? And they might Google mindful. I don't feel I've ever done that. However, there are probably things that I do naturally that would be considered mindful activities or being mindful. And like we've already discussed, going out for a walk on my own with nothing but my thoughts is mindful. It's me just kind of getting out, and I've always really enjoyed the idea of the flaneur, just going and being involved and like seeking an experience and just going with the flow. I think that's really nice. And ever since I first heard of that, that's something I really come back to a lot. It might be escaping through literature and just spending a day reading. It might be the crafts that I'm doing, like dedicating a bit of time when I can to just make something, whether it's good or bad. And actually, there's no such thing as good or bad, is there? It's like as long as you enjoy it. Yeah. Giving it a go, giving it a solid attempt. But yeah, just those types of things. And maybe it's my routine of my Pilates that I like to do. I guess someone else might call that mindfulness. And I guess it's me practicing time for myself and getting away from my thoughts and just kind of like being. So yeah, I guess I do.
Yeah. So for someone who might come to you and say, I don't like being on my own, I'm scared to be alone with my thoughts, how would you advise them to kind of get into that headspace?
I think if the thoughts are too much in your head, get them onto paper or put them in your notes on your phone. Yeah, like just do it, get them somewhere else. And you might, do you know what? Don't even ever look at them again if you don't want to. I have pages and pages of diaries that are really sad, actually, when I've looked at them. Like, there's great things as well, don't get me wrong. I've captured like the days that have been epic. But there are moments where I'm obviously not, I'm having a moment where it's like, I've had a really bad day and I'm really down about myself, or who knows what's happened. But those thoughts were put elsewhere and then parked. And I think that's really powerful. And maybe it's like when I've been particularly like worried about life and having lots of stresses, sometimes I just do like a spider diagram of what's concerning me. Just so like I can recognize, you know, what's happening, what are these like exterior pressures that are making me feel the way I am. And my mum has this really irritating thing whenever I go, I'm fine, and she's like, Jasmine, and she goes, halt, and I'm like, oh god, here it comes. And she goes, H, are you hungry? And I'm like, oh no, shut up, mum. And then she goes, A, are you angry? And she goes, L, are you lonely? And I'm just like, oh. And then T is, are you tired? And I'm like, good Lord, mother, leave me alone. But she always does that. She's right, you know, it's usually one of the four things. If I'm being snappy, it's one of those four. There's something causing those emotions. It really annoys me when she does that though. But yeah, it's like taking a moment to examine how you're feeling and why you're feeling it. And then once you recognize that, you can move on in the same way that like, oh, I have a stomach ache, what's causing it? Oh, I can do this and treat it. It's like you need to treat yourself.
Yeah, it's like, how do you like counter a bad mood? It's like that way, wouldn't it? Put it down on paper.
Yeah.
And then see how the causes come up, they show up somehow.
Yeah. And like, it's also absolutely fine to not be comfortable in your own company. Some people are naturally, they just need other people more to feel like they are at peace in the world, shall we say. And that's absolutely fine. And I think recognizing that about yourself is a really powerful like step into being more okay with being alone, because then you can be like, okay, I'm feeling lonely. What will make me not feel lonely? I'll phone my friend, I'll send a few texts, I'll go online and like look at the YouTubers I follow, or like, you know, it's about seeking out your community in other ways, particularly now when we're all kind of home most of the time and often on our own. And maybe it's like, if you live with housemates, reach out to your housemate, like build a personal connection in some capacity. I mean, yeah, you might not become best friends, but you could watch a film together, you could have a meal together, you could just have a little chat in the kitchen over a cup of coffee, you know. So I think there's things we can do, but ultimately I think my advice would be, if you feel lonely, reach out to someone.
Yeah.
In whatever capacity that might be, even if it's like you go on Bumble and you want to like swipe right a few times, like just do it. Like whatever makes you feel more connected to the world around you, do it, and you'll feel better, I'm sure.
I think so too. I think that something that you brought up there's super important is that you can have all these tools in your toolbox, but community and friendship and connection are such vital things, lifelines almost.
Mm-hmm.
Also help you to accept and love yourself. If you're surrounding yourself with the right people, you can, that like it's limitless to how you can feel, you know.
Yeah.
Surrounding yourself with the wrong people, then it has a massive impact. So I think
Exactly.
key part in it as well.
And it doesn't, you know, especially now when it's hard to be around other people, I think that's why I want to emphasize it doesn't have to be like physically going and seeing someone. If, say, you're really into gaming, you can get online and game with a load of people who have a similar passion for it that you do. And that's still being creative. It's still like having a laugh with people and being social, albeit we're away from one another. But I do it with Instagram. I have like a community on Instagram that I'm a part of, that where we all collect vintage, and I really love it. It's great. And sometimes I just need a fix and I go on it and I'll like see what everyone else is doing, and then people will comment on my things, and I've made friends that way. So like, and I have friends who are online friends, we've never met in person. But it's still me reaching out to my community. And I have, you know, there's people who are not interested in that who are in my life, and so I don't go to them with that interest. You know, it's kind of like we all have different people for different things. But yeah, like ultimately, if you're lonely and if you feel very much in your head with your thoughts, there's always someone who will want to listen to you.
Yeah. Very nicely put. How would you, like the last one, how would you sum up self-love?
I think,
After everything we've spoken about, how would you sum it up?
I would sum up self-love as really it's the relationship you have with yourself and all of your guises, because let's face it, we are many different characters in one body. Who I am at work is not who I am outside of work, thank God. But it's about, I think it's just knowing who you are, but crucially being okay with who you are and going on a journey to keep growing as a person. And the only way you do that is by continually checking in with yourself and making time for healing, whether that's mental healing, as in like just going to bed early and resting, or getting away from things that stress you out, and physical healing as well. Self-love is like, and I've done this recently, I've been having like digestive issues. I spoke to a doctor about it. I've dealt with this for years, and finally I was like, no, I'm going to talk to a doctor about it. And in that moment, I've done myself such a service. And why didn't I do it before? I don't know. It's kind of bizarre, isn't it? And I think it's things like that. It's like, okay, what do I need? And let's do it for me. And I think that's, for me anyway, that's what self-love is.
Super empowering and very beautifully put.